lot might depend on the views of the incoming President Donald Trump. He has said he wants the wars wrapped up here by the time he takes office. I mean, might this be something he would go for?
I think that he would understand, and Israel would certainly understand, that it's inconceivable that Hamas would truly demilitarize, truly give up its weapons. Now, if we go back to pre-October 7th thinking, you could conceivably have a situation where everybody agrees to pretend that Hamas has demilitarized, where in fact Hamas would indeed openly, keep its weapons, perhaps not strut through the streets with them, but keep them and remain the dominant force. I don't see an Israeli government agreeing to that. I don't see the Israeli public accepting that. This could be, we've seen it again and again, sort of trial balloons sort of thrown into the discourse. Hamas will say, we're willing to show flexibility, and then allow the internal Israeli pressure to grow. This may be an attempt to, again, create internal Israeli pressure on the Israeli government to agree to what everybody knows would simply be a facade.
But Ash, I wanted to ask you about an interview that the outgoing Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, just gave to the New York Times, in which he admitted that pressure from his own administration on Israel had actually led Hamas to reject some of the previous offers of a hostage deal.
It's absolutely correct. And Hamas's main goal since the beginning has been to ensure its survival and its continued control of the Gaza Strip. Every time they saw American pressure, de facto arms embargoes, others on Israel to slow down or stop its military operations, that gave Hamas further hope that it would survive, and only led it to hardening its heart. And the same with the demands for releasing all the hostages. There's nothing that we would like more, that I would like more, to see all the hostages returned. But Hamas, in my view, is always going to keep some of the hostages as an insurance policy. And tragically, the realistic goal at this current stage is to maximize the number of hostages that are released, which is this difficult negotiations that we're seeing right now. I am hopeful that Hamas, due to Qatari pressure and due to their reading of the geopolitical situation, may release a few hostages as a gesture to President Trump as he comes into office.
And that's what's changed, isn't it? We've got a new president coming in to the White House, and the Iranian axis of resistance has all but fallen apart.
It's even more than that, Laura. As Yaakov said, the Iranian axis is falling apart, and the fear, for example, if Israel pulls out of Philadelphia, is that we'll see a renewal of weapons smuggling into the Gaza Strip. But those weapons are being funded primarily by Iran. If we saw an American maximum pressure campaign on Iran, an Israeli-American even conceivably strikes on Iran, the threat of Iran massively exporting weapons, importing them into the Gaza Strip might decrease. And in such a constellation, the Israeli presence in the Philadelphia corridor might be less essential.
And I know you've written a piece today about the relationship between Israel and the United States going forward, but on its way out the door, the Biden administration is reportedly signing off on an $8 billion arms sale to Israel. So that would suggest that the relationship is still pretty strong.
It would. There's still a lot of different ways that we can strengthen defense cooperation, intelligence cooperation, work together on new kinds of regional defense alliances, regional trade alliances. There's quite a lot of possibility, but certainly the threat of an American arms embargo on Israel, which was very encouraging to Hamas and which caused Hamas to harden its position, it appears that that threat is now off the table, and it's good that that's the case.
All right. From Naim Qassem, the latest Hezbollah leader there. I mean, this isn't the fire and brimstone we used to see from Nasrallah, is it? I mean, he is a diminished figure, and they are a diminished group, essentially, aren't they? But can they rebuild, do you think?
They absolutely are a diminished group. But the worst thing that would happen is if Israeli families start returning to the kibbutzim and the villages on the north, and then Hezbollah fires an anti-tank rocket with a 5-kilometer, 7-kilometer, 9-kilometer range, and, God forbid, hits a house, and even worse. Because that would totally destroy any faith in the government, in the IDF, if the people were told they could go back and then were once again threatened. Remember, the Iron Dome, on these anti-tank missiles, the Iron Dome is ineffective. So Israel absolutely must make sure that Hezbollah is not able to carry out those kinds of attacks. If the Lebanese armed forces can do it, that would be great. But as Yaakov pointed out, it appears that they are both unwilling and or incapable of doing so. And we know that, for example, Hezbollah has infiltrated into military intelligence in the Lebanese armed forces, which creates a catch-22, because on the one hand, you want to empower, you want to give foreign funding. The U.S., Europe wants to empower the Lebanese armed forces, but in doing so, they may end up actually empowering factions or units that are affiliated with Hezbollah.
Right, that's the question, isn't it? If the Lebanese armed forces are strong enough to do the job, if they're up to the task, really. And what about the...
I think there are some factions that are very much interested in that, but we still see a number of factions, even those that are not, whether Christian, whether even Sunni or Druze, who are still not willing to get up and say Hezbollah has destroyed our country, Hezbollah is preventing us from realizing our potential, from advancing, from rebuilding. And until they do, and these are very powerful forces, until they continue to see Hezbollah as legitimate resistance against Israel, I think it'll be very hard for Lebanon, unfortunately, to move forward.
OK, all right, for now, thank you very much. Start with you. Are these strikes, not just by Israel, but also, of course, by the United States and the UK, are they having any impact at all on the Houthis?
They're having some impact insofar as they're destroying specific weapon sites, depots, but they're not having a significant enough effect. The strikes have not been extensive enough. It's somewhat surprising because the Americans and the British and others are there with significant capabilities in the Red Sea, in the area. But nevertheless, the strikes have been very targeted. And Israel's strikes have taken out strategic sites, but because of the distance, because of the challenges involved in carrying on, and because of the fact that Israeli intelligence up until a year ago so was not dedicating a vast amount of resources to the Houthis, who thought the Houthis were going to be waking us up at 4:30 in the morning.
Not me.
Certainly not my 9-year-old or my 3-year-old. I'd have to get out of bed. So I think it's a process of gathering the necessary intelligence, but also we're going to hopefully see an American administration that takes a much more robust position in terms of ensuring that the Houthis are not able to disrupt a global maritime trade.
All right. Well,
I think that the strategy of working on putting in place a real maximum pressure campaign that targeted all of the anchors of Iranian's economy, all the sources of income that are supporting its terror network. Remember, the Iranians are selling missiles and UAVs to Russia. They are sending huge amounts of oil to China. Putting maximum pressure on Iran, either until Iran is forced to change its behavior or we see the Iranian people successfully change their regime, and there are many things that could be done to support those opposing the regime. That will, I think, be the right solution, and the one that President Trump, with his America First perspective, is more likely to support. I don't think that Israel needs to rush now to launch a strike. I think working with President Trump on a maximum pressure campaign, and if that fails, then moving to more kinetic operations would be the right strategy. OK,
continue their occupation of the Kurdish areas in the north of the country. I mean, Trump has undercut the Kurds before. What's to say he won't do it again?
Look, there's a lot of moving pieces in the region. We don't know. Iran is going to try to increase its influence in Iraq. It's going to try to undermine Jordan. Turkey, which is becoming an increasingly important base for Hamas in Syria. And the tricky part here is that Jordan, Iraq, Turkey, Qatar are all presumably United States allies. But at the same time, in different ways, they're either being targeted by Iran or, in the case of Qatar and Turkey, are supporting radical Islamist groups. And the U.S. is going to have to navigate between its various interests. That brings us back to what Blinken said. Unfortunately, we have not seen the United States ever put real pressure on its supposed allies, Qatar and Turkey, with relations to Hamas. And we have to hope that if President Trump truly does want to see a release of the hostages, an end to the continued wars, stability in the region, the expansion of the Abraham Accords, the United States is going to have to tell its allies, stop supporting these radical extremist groups or regimes that are undermining stability in the region.
Okay.